Yadgar Ismail, a political analyst from Iraq. Ismail, thank you for joining us. Mr. Ismail, the US and Iraq have sealed an agreement to formally end the combat mission in Iraq by the end of 2021. But President Joe Biden declined to say how many US troops will remain in the country. Will the US keep some of its troops in Iraq despite formal pullout?
Well, thank you for this opportunity. Thanks for having me in this news. Well, basically, as we see this agreement, I mean, this has been a continuous process, demand from the Iraqi political parties, from the parliament. We saw that in last year that they wanted the U.S. the combat troops out of Iraq and a complete withdrawal, actually. And then now, to what extent this will be implemented? I mean, according to the agreement that we have seen between the Prime Minister of Iraq and the President of the USA, the pullout, the withdrawal will be by the end of this year. So this means that the U.S., perhaps this administration, is continuing the same policy of the previous administration, because let's not forget the fact that there's a consensus amongst the Iraqis, most of them, of course, not all of them, let's be precise, and the Americans to actually finally withdraw and end the combatant mission or the of the U.S. Army on Iraqi soil.
Right. Mr. Ismail, with the recent sharp increase in ISIS attacks in Iraq, is this a favorable time for the withdrawal of U.S. combat forces?
Well, the issue with these, basically, you know, the security forces in Iraq are not controlled or directed through one, let's say, channel. For example, there are different groups, different military groups that are directed by different political leaders and different political, we can say, militia leaders, and so maybe they are sort of technically under the umbrella of Commander-in-Chief, the Prime Minister, but then they do not really get their commands from him directly. So the issue of this increase in security risks, attacks here and there, not only by the ISIS, even by other, let's say, extremists, specifically in west and the north of Iraq, you know, just on the border with the KRG government, we see that there is movement because of lack of security and lack of coordination between these forces. So the Iraqi forces amongst themselves, they lack a mutual understanding, or perhaps they don't have a mutual planning to deal with these threats. So now if the U.S. withdraws, now there is this consensus amongst many Iraqis, not most of them, that Iraq will undergo a situation similar to the situation we see now in Afghanistan. So an increase of attacks, perhaps neo-ISIS forces will also re-emerge in Iraq.
Right. Mr. Ismail, how can U.S. military pullback in Iraq benefit Iran?
Basically, it is rather a justification. Otherwise, I mean, the U.S. military forces are not intervening in any way in the political arena. So, but there is a consensus amongst the Iraqis, specifically those who are closer to Iran, that they should get out. Of course, on the other hand, you know, if you are talking about international law, if you are talking about the sovereignty of Iraq, it is better for these forces to have a better definition, or another definition. Now, some, let's say, experts, some people are even saying that maybe these forces will remain under a different name in Iraq, the U.S. forces. But then, on the other hand, of course, they shouldn't leave. And as I said earlier, there's this consensus both in Iraq and USA that this war should end in one way or the other.
Yadgar Ismail, thank you for speaking to Indus News.